Hi, I'm Sharzad Morgan. This video is about love addicts. It might help to briefly review this relationship chart. This is made by Terry Real, terryreal.com. He's a well-known therapist in the Boston area who specializes in couples counseling. And so does his wife. They have done a lot of really good, interesting work. So people can be either boundary-less or walled off at the extremes, okay? Or they can be in a shame position or a grandiose one-up position. So let's look at the four quadrants. And it's not like you're in one of these or the other, right? You can move around, or you can just be, in this corner or this corner. But in general, having no boundaries means that you can be like you take in everything that people say to you and get your feelings hurt easily, and you also say whatever you want without regard of how it lands, right? Not having good boundaries. If you're walled off, you're like hard to get to. You just like a stone wall. I think people kind of get the idea. The ideal is to be in the middle. This is where real intimacy occurs. We want our boundaries to be such that we are protected yet connected. So for example, someone who is boundaryless, if they're filled with shame, they're a people pleaser. They're anxious, they horribilize, they're manipulative, and they're desperate. And this is one type of love addict. It's like, please love me, chasing someone, chasing people who treat you badly. You don't have any boundaries and you're just chasing love. And your attitude is, what can I do to make you love me? And that's where I'm going to put all these guys who think they're nice men, but they're really needy, or women who are chasing. I've been in this quadrant before, chasing guys who hooked up with me who wanted nothing to do with me because I didn't give and my boundaries were not good. Now, you can be boundaryless and be in the grandiose position, and that's the abusive guy, the guy who abuses you or puts you down. He's emotionally volatile, reactive, a scolding parent, and controlling. And the idea is, you're not going to love me? Well, take this, bitch. And you can have someone who's a love addict who is like, please love me. And then if you don't love me, they go into the one-up position. They start putting you down or abusing you. Every abusive man is in this boundaryless position. No boundaries, just doing whatever he wants, saying whatever he wants from a one-up position. So we'll go into love addicts in more detail in a second. Let's go into the walled off position. So the person who's walled off, there are two types of walled off people. The walled off person who was never modeled any feelings at home, so they don't even know how to feel. These are people who don't feel anything. Or they were enmeshed as children, and so they put up a wall. Or they saw abuse at home growing up, so they put up a wall. But actually, if you saw abuse in your home growing up, you could be more boundaryless because children absorb everything. So if you see your parents arguing and they don't have any boundaries, then you grow up having no boundaries. All of this is learned, you guys. People don't want to talk about their childhood, but we only see what we learn, and that's what we learned, right? Let's get back to this. So the grandiose one-up is high and mighty, indifferent, passive-aggressive, and never wrong. I'm going to put my ex-husband in here. And, like, you can't get to me. Everything is fine. I don't want to talk about it. Just walled off. That's the grandiose side. On the shame-filled side, this person is going to be someone depressed. I'm going to put the incels in this category. People who've just given up, who are depressed. They're walled off and they're shame-filled and they don't think anything, they can make a difference. They're depressed, self-medicating, withdrawn, and resistant. So the idea is to kind of see where you are. And, all of us as humans, we fall around in these quadrants, but we want to get into the middle and learn to see where we are and regulate our emotions. So the person who's a love, let's talk about the love, now that you kind of get an idea of the different ways that people can be, let's talk about the love addicts. And they're going to be on the boundaryless side. They don't have boundaries. They don't have good boundaries. And because they never learn to love themselves, they can only love by projecting abundance. They don't feel their own abundance, so they project abundance onto another person. And then when that person lets them down, which they inevitably will, then they become angry. Okay, I forgot to tell you this part. This part is really super interesting. So a love-dependent person will put someone else on a pedestal, project all this perfection and abundance onto them. And then in order to feel that abundance themselves, they want to merge with the other person. They want to become one with the other person. They always want to be around that person. They chase that person. And when that person lets them down by not doing everything that they want, oh, well, you forgot to pick up the milk. You must not love me. Fuck you, bitch. For example, I'm exaggerating. Or, what can I do to make you love me? Please love me. I'll be whatever you want. Let me read some more from my notes on this, because the love dependents filter their self-esteem through other people. I don't know how to love myself or feel my own abundance, so I project it onto you. And if you love me, I'm okay. And if you don't love me, or, you're reading a book and not looking at me, I feel deserted. I feel abandoned. And now I go into my reactive strategy of chasing you, going into one-up position. That other person's love is your drug. Without her love, you are crushed and you feel abandoned. And some people have about 10 seconds of tolerance for feeling abandoned, and then they go into the one-up position. I would say that I was definitely in that lower quadrant in the last few years of my marriage. I didn't have good boundaries. I was wanting to figure out how I could get him to love me. And I was struggling with that abandonment part. It was very painful. I didn't know all this stuff back then. So the one down position is desperate, please love me. The one up position combines their neediness with a sense of entitlement. I'll criticize you for not doing it right. I'll hit you, this, and this. So what you do first, the thing that you do in therapy first is you show people what they're doing. You just point it out, because people don't know what they're doing. We just react and act, the way we think we know how. And sometimes we know we get triggered. We don't know how or why we think that's how we are. So you point out the pattern. And then the good thing is you do some inner child work. You take this person inside of their own body and have them reconnect with that little girl or that little boy that was never loved. These people were not properly loved as children. And you have them connect and love that little boy and that little girl within. And today in the couples webinar, Terry Real took one of the men through this. It was so moving. Like, we were all moved. I was crying so hard. And after he opened his eyes, he was a completely transformed person, a man who'd spent 50 years of his life in pain and unhappy relationships, because he had made his wife, his first wife and his second wife, responsible for every time he felt abandoned, because he just had never learned what it was and that he could soothe himself. And now every time he feels abandoned, it probably won't be as hard because he did some deep healing work today, but he has to take a little time out, love that little boy, and then reconnect with his wife. You cannot go around taking this out on other people. And it's a very distraught way of living. Another thing that these, hold on, let me check my notes. So love addicts also get hyper-focused on how their partner has failed them. So because they don't have their own sense of abundance, they're constantly looking to that other person to give them something. So they become a little bit needy, which is a turnoff, and they're constantly holding a grudge against all the stuff you didn't give them. And so it's very unattractive, and usually there's no sex happening, because who wants to have sex with a guy who's constantly criticizing you for not loving him enough and is needy and focused on what you didn't give him? One of the things that we talked about today was too that it's so important in relationships to have emotional generosity, that instead of being so focused on, these are my needs, wants, and desires, what are you doing for me, is to come from a generous giving place in your relationship. Because when you focus on being generous and giving from your heart, emotionally generous, you will get much more in return. If you focus on what you're not getting, you will get less and less. And so a really important skill in relationship is to really listen to your partner. And this is where men have to do a lot of the work. Any guys watching this who are like, women are all bitches, if you have that attitude, that's why you're single and you're not in a happy relationship. Okay? So because it's so important. A lot of men grew up in the patriarchy where they were shamed. It's a cultural thing where men were shamed for having feelings. So Terry was saying he works with a lot of men to open their hearts. So this isn't just about, if you don't feel your own abundance, you're close to your own self-love. You have to open to your own abundance and share it freely. And what you do is you really listen to your woman, you hear what she says, and you give her what she wants. And I'm not talking about her saying, buy me Gucci purses. I'm not talking about that. What the woman really wants is for you to listen to her feelings and care how she feels. That's what we really want. To have some boundaries and be there for us, to be a competent man and be there for us, and to be emotionally generous. Not one down. What can I do for you, baby? What can I do? Please love me. Not one up. If you don't give me what I want, you're going to pay the consequences. Not walled off. Oh, you didn't love me, so forget you. I don't need you anyway. And not depressed, because that's no fun. To be feeling your own abundance, and from that abundance to walk around life with an open, generous heart. And that's a practice. Anyway, so those are some of the things that we were, kind of talking about. There are a lot of ways that people can be ineffective in relationship. And there are a lot of, people bring their childish ways of being into their relationships, whether they're an entitled, spoiled brat, that thinks they don't have to participate in the relationship or work like an entitled Peter Pan child, whether they're, under-functioning in some way, whether they're nursing a grudge, and Terry will be like, get over it, get over it. This is not... You can't be nursing grudges. You can't be acting all entitled, and that's why relationships are so good, because they force us to expand and be better people. So, So anyway, just to sum up, love addicts are people who are not in touch with their own abundance. And so they project the abundance that they're not in touch with, that they actually have, onto other people. And then they want to merge with that other person and get love from that other person. When that other person doesn't give it to them, they fall into some despair, or they go into a one-up position and start punishing that person, withholding love, withholding affection, belittling, criticizing, judging, hitting. Every abusive man is just being entitled. He feels entitled. You didn't love me enough, so fuck you, bitch. Like that, for example. All love addicts. They're all love addicts. So the key is to discover your own abundance. And for that, you can do inner child work. You can do abundance meditations. And you want to come in touch with your feelings and having feelings. And for these men who are, for people who are love addicts or who are walled off, coming in touch with their feelings is very difficult actually for them. So there are different things that you can do. And a lot of these people that don't feel their own abundance, they were really harshly abused as children. Terry talked about one example of an 80-year-old client he had who, as a little boy, used to do like wood carving in bed or make things like in bed. And his father would come in every night and take that thing out of his hand and say, you're just a piece of shit. Don't be making that wood stuff. And this is how the boy just shut down his feelings. He felt nothing until they did this abundance meditation when he was 80 years old. And he goes, that's the first time I ever felt love. And there was another boy who at the age of 4, I guess they took his blanket and his little baby blanket and burned it or something. Or, parents who are mocking their children or shaming their children or sexually abusing their children. There's a lot of neglect, which those of us who weren't neglected don't know, but it really damages people. And then these people get into relationships and they're not very good partners. I would ask anyone you're dating who they went to for comfort, who played with them when they were little, who comforted them when they were sad when they were little, who loved them. And I would find out if there was any addiction in the family, any mental illness. If there was a sick sibling, that sibling got the attention at your expense. Parents who are struggling with their own problems, whether it's addiction or depression, some kind of like physical pain where they're bedridden. They're not emotionally available for their children, so those children have to raise themselves, and they don't want to be a burden, and they get emotionally walled off. Parents where there's a divorce at a young age and mom just brings home another alcoholic husband and she isn't there to protect you, and the parents who are yelling at you and there's no one protecting you. Like if there was someone yelling at you, who was protecting you? And another thing is that they will say, that I learned today, is that people will take physical abuse over emotional abuse. That the emotional abuse is like 10 times worse than the physical abuse. And so you'll see that people who grew up in these neglectful homes get into these love-dependent relationships, abusive relationships. That's all they know. That's why if you see your pattern and you can heal yourself, then what resonates with you energetically, what you see normal and as loving and as healthy, is going to shift. Some of the couples had a lot of issues. You could see that the people individually had a lot of issues. And some of these men looked very sad or depressed or angry. If you look at someone, you're like, I could never live with that. That's probably your blatant person. And then there was one couple that actually seemed like they were very healthy and mature. But maybe that's more normal. I don't really know how most couples are, because the way that I'm sure that all of these couples have beautiful Instagrams and Facebooks. You don't really know what people are struggling with until they're like in a therapist's office. But there's immense healing. Like they were all so healed. And then us all witnessing each other, that's the power of doing work in a group. They were also moved by each other. They all want to be friends and get together. And we, as the coaches and therapists observing this, were all so moved as well, and seeing what's possible and what kind of transformation is possible. So that's my video about love addicts. Although I went into a lot of other stuff too. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching my video. Oh, and contact me for coaching. I am still learning all this stuff, so I have my rates pretty low at $45 or $50 an hour. I don't remember. But as I get more practice and get better, my rates will be more in line with what a therapist charges. So you don't have to work with me. You can just watch my videos. But I am throwing it out there that I do want to get some practice on this stuff myself too. Thank you for watching my video.